All right, 11:31. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone to today's Play Today PD session. It's a very special session where we're showcasing our 1,000 Play Streets movement. My name's Kieran. I'm the Director of Campaigns and Community Engagement at Play Australia, and I'd like to start by welcoming you all today and acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. I pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. And I'd particularly like to recognise the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation where I live in the outskirts of Melbourne. And look, I welcome you to all share where you are and the lands you're on. Please feel free to pop it in the chat function. And it's always nice to see where people are tuning in from. Fantastic. Oh, I can see Brad's written a message. I'm not hearing anything. Brad, I think it might be to do with your own settings. So look, today is a free PD for Play Australia members and non-members as part of our online learning series. And we've got about 40 people registered today. Generally, we find with these sessions, if we get about half that, we're doing well. And what we'll do is we'll record the session and share the session with those that can't attend a little bit later. In terms of other housekeeping, I had put everyone on mute just to avoid feedback during the mini presentations. However, when we come to the discussion portion at the end of today, I'll update the settings and enable people to take themselves off mute to join discussion and ask questions. But in saying that, you can place questions in the chat function in the meantime. So look, let me get started by sharing some slides. Today I'm sort of running the back end as well, so I'll try and do it as seamlessly as possible, but we'll see how we go. And hopefully you can all see that presentation that I've got up there. Ellie, can you give me a thumbs up just to confirm that? Yep, perfect. So look, it's a bit of a different session today. We're calling it a showcase because the content involves a wide variety of content. I'm just going to take myself off presenter mode. And so we're all the content obviously links to our 1,000 Play Streets initiative in support of local government practice to open more streets for people. We're involving a number of different speakers, so including myself, we've got Ellie and Erica on the line. In previous PD sessions, we've normally had one presenter where we sort of do a deep dive into a particular content area. This is really about giving you smaller bites of content with a view that you can pursue any lines of interest that you like. So for those who aren't familiar with Play Australia's 1,000 Play Streets movement, it's part of the broader Streets for People agenda that's popular right now across the globe. And it's very much inspired by our global neighbour in Playing Out, who have recently scaled their 1,000 Play Street, or they're Playing Out a temporary street movement to over 1,500 streets around the UK, which is kind of amazing. So they're getting really strong traction and really strong support through all the levers of government, which is really nice to see. And we're learning a lot from them as we move down the line. We initiated the 1,000 Play Streets movement back in 2019 to build on lots of good work that's already been done in Australia to open streets for people, and work that's been done in WA and SA and Queensland and Vic. There's been lots of good practice, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to build on that knowledge base and grow the movement. And we're able to grow the movement thanks to many. We wouldn't have gotten to where we are without the important support of our funders, being Australian Sports Commission within the Australian Government and Office for Rec Sport and Racing within the South Australian Government. And the content that we're sharing with you today is off the back of projects supported by those really important partners. We also want to recognise our all-important research partner in Centre for Sport and Social Impact, so Erica at Trobe, who's been absolutely key in bringing the story to life and capturing that evidence base. And we've had lots of local government partners involved in the movement thus far. Particularly, I want to give a shout out to Ellie at City of Canning and Leeza at City of Onkaparinga, who have been instrumental in supporting today's proceedings and developing the content that we're sharing today. And lastly, I'm pleased to say that we're really rapt to announce that 1,000 Play Streets recently won global recognition through the International Play Association by receiving the 2023 Right to Play Award for our work in protecting children's rights in Australia to access play in neighbourhoods. So we're pretty rapt with that one. And it's a testament to all our partners, local government, local groups, communities who've been involved in the movement thus far. I won't start naming people because that's dangerous territory. You know who you are. So look, let me get stuck into the agenda for today. I'll give a bit of an overview of Play Streets to kick things off and give you an update on where the movement is. We've got 4 key chunks for today. We've got Ellie from City of Canning in WA discussing how they're building local government support after their recent Play Streets pilot in 2022. We've got Erica from Centre for Sport and Social Impact discussing a new Play Streets research initiative. So looking at how we can support local government to drive more equitable approaches to Play Streets and involve those communities who really need it. And then we'll also be discussing our new Connect and Play guide, which is geared towards local Play Street hosts. Unfortunately, Leeza from City of Onkaparinga has come down with a head cold, so you've got me for that one. And then chunk number 4 is a national update on 1,000 Play Streets, and we've got some time for questions as well. So I would love to involve you all in that. So look, broadly speaking, the 1,000 Play Streets movement, it's about creating stronger communities, and it's about getting communities and empowering communities to reclaim their streets as places to connect and play. For neighbours of all ages, that's really important. So we've seen through the movement that we've got a wide variety of people, diverse variety of people who live on streets, particularly older adults, and it's wonderful to see some intergenerational connections and play happening through our Play Streets, which is, we'd love to see more of that. So it's not just a movement for children. Play is for everyone. Connections for everyone. It's for whole of neighbourhoods. In terms of our reach so far, these are some stats that I pulled at the end of March. We're tracking at about 140 Play Streets since we kicked off the movement. You'll be interested to hear that over 100 plus of those Play Streets have occurred through South Australia, thanks to the support from Office for Rec, Sport and Racing. We've involved heaps of neighbours, so children and adults, older adults, involving over 7,000 neighbours. We've worked with 17 local governments and 80 local community partners. And that community partner number is really important because what we've learned is that in order to support outreach to those communities who really need our Play Streets movement the most, it's really key that we've got those local partners to support door knocking and connections with community and the creation of welcoming environments. So our community partners, we love to see a big mix involved with the Play Streets movement. And our volunteer Play Street hosts are absolutely key again to getting things going. Over 220 involved thus far, and these are local people who live on the streets who've sort of said, look, I really want to be the champion for my street. I'm going to work with my local government around the permit application, and I'm going to try and connect in with my communities to create a great experience for all. And we're across 4 states so far. We'd love to be across the rest of Australia. So if you do come from various parts of Australia that we haven't been, we'd love to work with you as well. It's a movement that's steadily growing. And so what we're learning across the board, a key learning from my end is that in order for local governments to really embrace progressive policy that supports Play Streets, partnerships are key. Partnerships are absolutely key in terms of building the case to convince leadership that Play Streets and open streets initiatives are a good thing for our community, and we should be valuing these kinds of initiatives. We also recognise that local government needs strong resourcing in terms of workforce and budget, particularly within community development teams who had been the drivers of the 1,000 Play Streets movement. We know that knowledge is key, and it's really interesting to understand, right, well, what's a feasible model that local government can deliver with minimal resources, but also supports engagement with the communities who really need it and addresses the equity challenges around these kinds of initiatives. So knowledge is key in that respect, and to unlock productive policy and closed streets. Traffic management continues to be an issue, as you can imagine, and we're learning a lot through our partnerships. And also, we need to come together on the all-important advocacy. So that's not only about changing internal policies within local government to make sure it's easy for local government and communities to get involved in play streets, but it's also to address the external barriers. So looking at state legislation and changes we need to make at that level to make it easier for everyone involved. And that's a story that's really come out through our South Australian local government play network. How do we influence together and make it as easy as possible for our communities to embrace play streets? And how do we influence at that state government level, but also within the decision makers within our local government internally? And this is my segue to introduce Ellie, who's just been involved in a play streets pilot in City of Canning in WA last year, and is looking at how she can influence, or the community development team can influence the conversation internally to take play streets further. But I'm going to introduce you, Ellie, right now. I've got my little script here. Ellie Efijemueh is a community development officer from City of Canning in WA, and recently led their play streets pilot last year for their Queen's Park communities. Today, Ellie will be talking about her involvement and how they are building the case to generate stronger support for play streets amongst their leadership. Now, before I welcome you in, Ellie, I've got a little video that I'm going to play for everyone. It's a bit of an inspiring introduction, this one, from your recent pilots. So get ready, and hopefully the sound works. Welcome, Ellie.
Thanks, Kieran. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here this morning. I just first off, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands which I'm presenting on today, the Whadjuk Noongar people, and pay respects to our local elders. Probably a bit of context to start off with of Canning. So the City of Canning is a Perth Metro local government. It's landlocked, but we do have a beautiful Canning River that goes through our local government. We have different demographics in the City of Canning. So some very affluent areas and some not so affluent areas. We've got a very dedicated small community development team here at Canning, and as a few years ago, we introduced a neighbourhood approach within the City of Canning, and that neighbourhood approach has really sort of brought us into a very localised focus of our neighbourhoods. We really identified that there's areas in Canning that we haven't put a lot of investment into, and that we wanted to do that more in Canning. So the neighbourhood approach came on board a few years ago. They came on board with a small team of 2 people, and we started in one of our neighbourhoods in Queen's Park. So Queen's Park is very diverse. We've got over 60% of people in Queen's Park that were born overseas. It's also a very mixed socio-economic area as well. So, and again, was identified that we didn't have a lot of investment in that area so far. So that's sort of where we've kicked off this neighbourhood approach in Canning. And last year, when Play Australia came to us and asked us to partner on some funding for play streets, we jumped at the chance because it really fit well into the neighbourhood approach that we were doing in Canning. The neighbourhood approach is really about working with our internal teams, our infrastructure teams, our roads teams, our parks teams, to really come on board with the upgrades that are happening in a neighbourhood, and then really working towards activating the spaces in our neighbourhoods. So working with our community groups, our individuals, our neighbours in that area. So yeah, so Play Streets works really well with that. We, as you can probably see on the next slide, we've really supported our groups. So with the play streets that we ran last year, we did 6 play streets as part of the grant funding with Sport. And we partnered with 2 community groups, a play group, a local play group, and Barris Education and Culture, who are a Turkish not-for-profit that work in that area. And we ran 6 play streets, which were really successful. And you can see from the scores that we got here that, you know, the neighbourhoods, the people, the hosts really were very happy with the level of support that we provided with them. And I guess, you know, it's one to sort of focus on here, because we really heavily supported these groups to run these play streets. We helped with the traffic management, the road closures, marketing, public liability insurance, really supported getting them to understand what play streets means, what they can do on it, like really collaborate with ideas. So we really provided a heavy amount of support. And that was only made possible because of the neighbourhood approach that the city is taking at the moment. So that's one where I suppose we have to look at further at the moment, because with Canning, with our neighbourhood approach, we're looking at a 3-year rolling system with our neighbourhoods. So looking at having a 3-year revitalisation period in each neighbourhood, and then sort of moving on to the next neighbourhood. So we're really gonna have to look at sort of what sort of supports we're leaving behind in these neighbourhoods. And because Queen's Park has been our first neighbourhood, that's really sort of work that's sort of upcoming for us in this current financial year. So with the play streets that we ran last year, we really saw a lot of unintentional community-led outcomes from that. So people were really keen to do more, to be part of more, to run more things. So we had neighbours from one of the streets wanting to do a Halloween gathering after the play streets were run. We had Barris Education and Culture wanting to do a neighbourhood lunch in December. And then earlier this year, we had a local childcare learning centre come to the city and ask for support in running their own play street, which is sort of a great outcome for us, because they sort of were approaching us instead of us approaching others. So I guess from that, we really encouraged them to partner with the Canning Mosque, which is also located in Queen's Park. So they were very, very close together. So it was a great opportunity for 2 groups to come together and really enhance a local play street that sort of attracted sort of 200, 250 people. So that was a really great outcome that we had in April. And from here, I guess what we really need to focus on is what supports we're leaving behind in this neighbourhood, but also how do we keep the momentum going? because of the neighbourhood approach, we were able to do this. So with Canning, we've got 16 suburbs in Canning. So obviously, to do that within 16 neighbourhoods is not possible for us. So it's looking at sort of how the sustainability of these kind of programs are going to work for Canning. And again, what supports we're leaving behind in the neighbourhoods that we're moving on from. So the focus is really on how we can engage our executive teams and our council to really get some buy-in about these programs and really see the impacts of what's happening in the neighbourhood revitalisation space. So it's really focusing on that sustainability, really showcasing the journeys, I think, as well, and really showcasing the dominoes effect of the welcome actions that we start, and then how this encourages more action from our communities, and how we continue that after we finish the revitalisation period in each neighbourhood. So for Canning, it's a bit broader than play streets. We've done a lot of different welcome actions in the neighbourhood approach. So park activations, we've done sports clinics, we've done community dinners. There's lots of different welcome actions that we've done along with play streets. So it's looking at how we can encourage the community to continue these things with the limited support from council. So we're looking at, so this year's really focusing on that for me, but we're sort of looking at ideas of whether it's a bit of a community activation toolkit that we put together where we outline, what are the sorts of activities you can do, including play streets, but then, what's the process for doing it? What do you need to do? Who do you need to talk to? Tips and tricks, that kind of thing. Or possibly a bit of a mini grants program. So a bit of a short-term 1 to 2 year program where we look at sort of providing some smaller grants to enable the community to go ahead with these ideas or their own ideas, but supporting from a monetary point of view, at least for 1 or 2 years after we sort of exit a neighbourhood. So that's sort of the focus of where the work is going to be this year. As Queen's Park's been our pilot, we're going into another neighbourhood now. But sort of looking at what supports we can put in place, what does it look like for Canning, how can we achieve them, and how can we get the support of our council on board as well.
Thanks so much, Ellie. This is a really interesting space, and I liked what you're talking about there in terms of almost building out your theory of change around, right, well, if you invest, we can do these things, and this is the broader impact that can be achieved through community or at community level. And look, our hope is that the data that you've supported and collated through play streets that everyone can see. I've shared the case study in the chat, but our hope is that data will really support that internal business case to convince leaders that we should be investing in things like grant schemes, small scale grant schemes to get this happening. And what's interesting about that data set is that we've collated a lot of data on the impact of play streets in terms of being a catalyst for connection at a community level and a catalyst for outdoor play. But this slide that you can see on screen, it's a very different data set that we've collated on the value of Ellie and the community development team and all the great work that you do to connect with communities. So hats off to you, Ellie. I'm really keen to sort of keep across your journey over the next 12 months to see where you land and obviously how we can help you get there.
Absolutely. And you've been a great support so far, Kieran, so thank you.
Thanks, Ellie. I didn't pay Ellie for that one. Now, our next guest, we've got the wonderful Dr. Erica Randle, who's a senior researcher at Centre for Sport and Social Impact at the Trobe University. And Erica's been our 1000 Play Streets research lead since we sort of started off on this journey, since we initiated in 2019. And more recently, Eric has been developing up our research and advice for local government on driving equitable approaches to play streets, which is her topic for today. Welcome, Erica.
Thanks, Kieran. I'm just going to check you can hear me because my internet's going in and out, but are we good?
Yep,
all right,
good.
Cool. All right, thanks. I'm on the lands of the Bunurong people this morning and acknowledge Elders past, present and First Nations people on the call today as well. Also want to say thanks to all the amazing work that our LGA partners have done and their commitment to collecting data and sharing their experiences with us. It's been really, really valuable in moving the Play Streets movement forward in Australia. And this piece that we're launching today is a really good example of that. So yeah, thanks to our LGA partners across Australia. So the task at hand, as we've heard sort of from Ellie and Kieran, and as many of you would already be aware, play streets can have a really great impact on the social connection and play outcomes for communities. But what we found early on in the pilots was that play streets can have a bigger impact on communities who experience disadvantage. So communities in lower socioeconomic areas or areas with less services or council support, like we just heard from Ellie, or those where communities are less connected. And I guess this makes sense because advantaged communities are usually higher in social connection and play at the start of our Play Street programs than communities who may experience disadvantage. So in those communities who experience disadvantage, there's more room for improvement and greater impact. And we do find that Play Streets has that greater impact in those areas. What we also noticed, though, was that the time and the resources that it takes for an LGA to run a Play Street program in a community who experiences disadvantage is significantly higher because it takes more time to build the trust and connection with the community and also to support them through that organisation process. So what this sort of all showed us was that LGAs have a strategic decision to make about where and how they deliver play streets, depending on what resources the LGA has and the communities that they want to target. So ultimately, if you have less resources, then you may not be able to deliver play streets in the areas that you really want to and where they can have the biggest impact. So Kieran set us this great task of developing a resource to support LGAs to make play streets more equitable. So we wanted to know, how can we support LGAs to make the play street processes more effective for communities who may experience disadvantage and also more efficient for the LGA? We did this by engaging our LGA Brains Trust from all across Australia, and we asked them about the challenges that they face and all of the resource-intensive tasks it takes to deliver play streets in targeted areas. And then using all of that information, we were able to plan out an equitable approach to setting up a play street program and look at how we can best overcome all of those challenges. And the next slide, hopefully, is the result. So this is an action map for Australian local government to grow equitable community access to play streets. It's a mouthful. That's what it is. Put really simply, it's 5 steps that I'll go through each step in a minute. But in the document, I think that Kieran is sharing, we've stepped out each of the 5 steps. And each of them have key focus areas and recommended actions for each area, and also examples for each of them and some tips on where to get more support. So it's a really interactive document with some really great actionable areas. One really important thing to realise about setting up more equitable approaches to play streets is that although we have broken it down to just 5 steps, going through this process takes a lot of time. Depending on the existing resources and play street system in an LGA, this process could take anywhere between 3 months to up to 18 months, or where there is significant attitude or system change required, it can take even longer. So I'll go through each of the steps. The first step is to demonstrate the value of play. This is about advocating internally at your LGA or your government funders and explaining the value of play to all parts of the community and across all life stages. So not just the importance of play for young people, but importance for play for all people. It's about getting all the evidence you can and then telling that story. One great way that we've seen advocacy work is by getting your government ministers or your mayors or your councils along to a play street where you can. This way they can see the benefits firsthand and they become your your greatest advocates and allies then when it comes to trying to change the really big system processes or getting through those larger roadblocks. If we can establish a really strong foundation here at step 1 based on people understanding and valuing play, then we tend to see more sustainable Play Street program outcomes. The second step is to then establish government readiness. So this is about sorting out your internal processes at the LGA before you go out into community. So the key here is to gather your supporters and get them to help you to keep telling that Play Street story and the benefits, and then to engage all of the departments that you might need to establish a Play Street program. So it might be your roads management team, your youth team, your community development team, and your legal team. It's all about sort of bringing all of those departments to the table and then working out how you can best set up a Play Street process in your LGA. This is one step that is really crucial and can take some time. You might want to set up a Play Street process and then test it out in other parts of your community or in one of your own streets through a small pilot, learn, revise based on all the feedback that you can, and then, pilot again and build it slowly. It's also a step where you can look at all of the case studies that Play Australia has and learn from what other people have done. And I think what we've found is that LGA leadership, so, your senior leadership team within your council, they seem to be really persuaded if they can see that other LGAs have done a similar thing. So really use those resources that Play Australia has. Step 3 is around growing sustainable resourcing. And this is about ensuring that Play Streets isn't just a one-off taste of the wind kind of a thing, but actually that there are staff members allocated to Play Streets and that it's actually in somebody's role that they're actually supporting it. If Play Streets can be embedded into a strategy, even better. And if it's actually in someone's job description that is ongoing, then it has more chances of success and ongoing support. Again, here we have some really good examples of how LGAs have made traffic management processes and public liability more efficient and cheaper over time. So if you are starting out and you need some support in this area to show that Play Streets is value for money, then reach out again and look to those people that have gone before you for some really good tips. Step 4 is when we finally get to go out into community. So we've valued play, we've internalized the value of play, we've got our internal systems ready, we've got our team all around us, and now we can go out into the community and actually run some targeted community development to actually start to build trust and connection in the community and to find those volunteers or hosts or those people who might want to attend a Play Street. What is really important here is that when talking and engaging with these target communities, we set expectations about what role or support the LGA can give before the Play Street, but most importantly, what the role is after the Play Street. So what we've heard from a lot of communities who were sort of less connected at the start, so there's really communities that we're targeting, we go back and we talk to them after they've run a Play Street, and we talk to them about, would they be interested in holding another one? And they all say, yeah, that would be terrific. We would love to, but we're waiting for the LGA to contact us again. Whereas the LGA person is sitting in their office and they're waiting for the community to drive it. So there has to be some understanding beforehand and communication beforehand about what the roles and the expectations are around community and council before, during, and after the Play Street. Some good tips for this area is to try and get a community volunteer group of members to come together and organise a Play Street rather than relying on one organiser or host. Because what we find, if you go into a community and it can actually get a group of people together to help you organise it, then they develop their confidence and connection quicker together. It also makes it a lot more fun for them, and also we see more sustainable outcomes. Just make sure, though, that this hosting group has someone in the LGA that they can contact easily for more support. And the final step is to foster community sustainability. And really, we think about sustainability from the very first step. That's really important. But this last step is really thinking about how we can foster that connection, grow the confidence and grow the capability within communities who held the Play Street and what we know, that they need in order to sustain those play outcomes. An important thing to recognise here that sustainable play outcomes and our measures of success may look different in each street. So for some, success might be holding more play streets, but for others, success might just be that some children met at the play street that we had, and they're continuing to connect and ride their bikes together around the neighbourhood. That's a great outcome and a sustainable one for play. It might be the establishment of walking groups of residents that met at the play street. It might just be that people are now connecting and talking together more and they feel safer in their environment. Another sustainable great outcome. So how do we get people to connect, build their confidence so that those outcomes are ongoing post the play street? And I think, as Kieran pointed out, he's about to introduce you to a resource that Play Australia have put together to show you ways that can support that connection. Thanks, Kieran.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Erica. Yeah, I gave Erica, I said, look, can you squeeze it into 10 minutes? And you've done well. I didn't think you were going to get there, but amazing research. And no, look, I love hearing about all your work, and it's great how you were able to connect with all the local government partners involved, because it's very much like local government led, all our learnings. So look, the next one is our Community Connect and Play Guide. I mentioned before, Leeza has a head cold, so unfortunately she's not here today. The reason why I wanted Leeza to present this one is she's been so important in terms of the development. She's a co-author. She's previously done work with us at Play Australia, but her normal day job is Community Development Officer at City of Onkaparinga in SA, and they're doing some amazing work there to connect with their communities and support play streets, running spooky streets during Halloween time, and they've got some great resources on their website. So look, the Connect and Play guide has come about through funding through Office for Rec, Sport and Racing. So we're grateful for the funding support under the Active Collaboration Program grant. And why it's come about is that we recognise that a lot of our resourcing to date has been geared towards local government and supporting practice and supporting policy development. We don't have that much resourcing for communities, and so this is really a first in many steps, we hope, in terms of building out more resourcing for communities and those who are actually involved in play streets. And we know the play street hosts are so fundamentally important to drive play streets, and we need to support them any way we can. And so what we've done is through our Brains Trust in South Australia, we've got our South Australian Play Network. We've developed up a bunch of ideas on how play street hosts can support connection and play. And I can see Erica's just shared it on there on the chat. So feel free to jump in and have a look. Lots of different ideas. And these are ideas to support connection and play during play streets, but also some ideas around how we can sustain connection and play after play streets, and what does sustainability mean. And a lot of what Erica was talking about just before is reflected in this resource. Some of my reflections are that in terms of driving connection, food and culture has been absolutely key. And you would have seen through the video that Ellie shared before, a really strong multicultural community. And we have seen this, particularly within our multicultural communities participating in play streets statewide in other states, that food has really been the glue that's brought people together, and a beautiful way to share culture as well. In terms of play, one of the standout ways that people have played, and it's interesting because we're Play Australia and we're all about preserving spatial justice for children and supporting free play, and play streets needs to provide free play for children, an opportunity for them to choose what they want to do, when they want to do it, how they want to do it, get muddy, get messy. But one of the things that we've seen is that there has been a role for structured play as well, and cricket has been popular amongst a lot of the play streets. And I will argue that it's more for the dads so that they feel comfortable as a bit of an icebreaker to bring people together. But it's been great to see, because it does provide community with a focal point in the centre of the street. It enables people to stand side by side and connect. It enables everyone to come together and play a game together with a view that they can go off and do their own thing again. We're advocates for free play, and we want children to access these environments like streets to do whatever they want. It's interesting to note that some of the children involved in our play streets so far have actually never played on the street. And stories like children riding their bikes for the first time on streets. That's been a story of Play Streets. And look, I've got endless connection stories. And I know I'm not supposed to be talking about these stories now, but there was a really interesting story that I heard the other day, and it was there were two fellas who lived on the street. One had been living on his street for 40 years, if you can believe it. Two doors down, there was another fella who'd been living on his street for 30 years. So they'd been living basically two doors away for 30 years. They'd never connected with each other. And they came to a play street and introduced themselves. And they couldn't believe that they'd been sharing the street for so long. You can't make this sort of stuff up, but it's kind of amazing, and a huge need to bring our communities together. And play streets, as we've seen, can be a real catalyst for that connection and play. So please get on, have a look at the resource, and use it at your will. We do have lots of other resources for local government available. Thanks to Erica and the team at Trobe, we're developing up the evidence base to demonstrate that Play Streets does impact connection and play, and does support children to develop up their physical literacy. And we've got a bundle of videos as well. So not only are we collating all that quantitative data, we're trying to tell the stories as well. So if you're advocating for Play Streets up the line, video is really important to bring that story to life. And again, Ellie did an amazing job at pulling together the video for Canning the other day. All these resources and evidence, it's all available on our website that I'll share with you later. We've got we're constantly updating our local government partnership offer. So we're trying to build out our value to local government as we move down the line and grow the movement. We've put a lot of work in terms of redeveloping our Play Streets toolkit. We've got version 3 available as of today, and you can jump online on our website and download that toolkit. And in that toolkit, there's a heap of planning advice and templates that you can access, a heap of video, a heap of evidence, and it's all built around building your internal readiness, supporting your connection with community, and growing the story as you move down the line. In terms of the partnership offer itself, all you need to be is a Play Australia member, and I think it's some $400 odd for a local government to be a Play Australia member, and you can access even more support beyond the toolkit. You can get some consulting support and access to promo resources and local government networks and the like. We've also got some additional resources in the context in form of play equipment and welcome signage. We recognise that some communities don't have access to the basics. I think when we started out, we just assumed that there'd be skip ropes and balls in the back of everyone's house, when we quickly found out that that's not the case. And so we've got play packs with a bit of chalk and frisbees and some other stuff to really help kickstart play in streets for those communities who need a bit of extra support. These are some examples of our promo resourcing that we supply to local government to help with engagement efforts. We can tailor these and modify these, and we'd love to work with you around inputting local pictures or changing the language or anything you like. But there's a bunch of stuff that we've sort of built as a foundation that you can use down the line. And in terms of other partnership supports, we've got online sessions that we run to bring our communities of practice together, to bring local government groups together. Eric has done an amazing job at pulling together a new evaluation toolkit that's now available for partners to support that all-important data capture and to support working out how you are going to tell your story and who you're going to tell that story to. And we can also come into your local government and run a half-day workshop around the policy development piece. And if you need something else, just ask us, because we're really keen to understand what local government needs and how we can support. All right, that is it from me, and I think we've sort of hit question time. So I'm going to update the meeting options to allow mic for attendees, and I'll save that off. But welcome questions if you have questions for myself, Ellie, or Erica. We've got about 17 on the session today, and we've got about 15 minutes left. So please, if you do have questions, now is your time. And if you don't have questions, I've got a couple of questions for Ellie and Erica. All right, Ellie. Ellie, I mentioned before that we're really interested in the next 12 months for you, and I guess how you build that business case for your internal leadership. What do you feel are the biggest challenges when you think about generating buy-in and getting support for small scale grants and the like, and greater support for your community development agenda? What do you see as the biggest barriers?
Probably the biggest barrier is really getting enough buy-in and understanding from our council about the benefits of the neighbourhood approach, of that engagement that we do, including the play streets, to really sort of put more resources and budget towards it. So, and I think that the main way we can do that is through the stories and through the impacts and through like I said, the dominoes effect of seeing the further actions that the community have taken, beyond what we have, helped plan and support. So yes, I think it's really sort of showcasing those stories and really getting them to understand the full impacts of what we do what we can do at a neighbourhood level.
That's gold, Ellie, and it really speaks to some of the work that we're doing in SA with City of Charles Sturt, who's been supporting their street meets initiative for some time now, and they're at the point where local communities are involving themselves in play streets, but it's sort of 3 or 4 years on, and we've got an opportunity to come back to those communities now and have a really interesting discussion about what sustainability means and what's fallen out of these street meets and play streets to sort of tease out those benefits. And that's a piece that we're going to be working on over the next few months, which is exciting. I can see in the chat we've got some questions from Amy. Do you know if you've worked with Bayside City Council? We haven't. In Vic, we've worked with Moreland Darebin and Dandenong. And what's the biggest highlight you've seen from this initiative? Oh, that's a big one. Erica, what do you think?
Biggest highlight?
Yeah.
I think it is just how simple it is, although it's really, really hard. I want to acknowledge it's really, really, really hard work, but just how something so simple as come out onto the street and play, just the amazing benefits it has, and beyond just the other play street, but every play street we have, there's those stories of connection, isn't there, about people meeting for the first time. During COVID, it was that intergenerational connection about children meeting their elders for the first time, and then during COVID, checking on those people, and just how such a simple thing can have such amazing community development. We should have them in every street. Yeah.
Ellie, do you have a highlight from last year running play streets?
Oh, I have lots, but probably the main one that I really love to see was just the confidence building in the hosts themselves. So really going from really unsure at the beginning, weren't really sure, what their role was, what they were doing, really, and really showing them through that process, and then really getting to the end of the play streets and really understanding, how beneficial it is, how they could be involved, and then the appetite for more, that they wanted to see more of this happening as well. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Look, from my end, I've just enjoyed hearing all the different local stories that have flowed out from play streets. There's a really nice quote in the community impact summary from our South Australian evidence review, and it was a quote about a young girl who'd set up a hair salon, and she was about 14 or 15, and she decided, right, I'm going to sort out all these haircuts. She lined up all the little kids and they all walked away with ponytails and crazy hair, and I thought that was wonderful, because I had an inkling that young children were just going to take over the streets and feel comfortable to get in there and play. And I suppose I had a bit of a question around, well, what does play look like for teenagers? And it's just wonderful to hear those kinds of stories coming out, and some of the intergenerational stories. I think when we first started off, I think one of the play streets at Moreland, there was an older gentleman who came out and sort of said, "Oh, you're the people who've been stealing all my lemons over the last few years." And he was more than happy that people were stealing his lemons. But I think just, growing those simple connections. And this particular street, they started up a worm farm, and we've seen other streets start up their own little libraries. And look, I just, again, love to see the snowball effect. Erica.
Kieran.
Yes. Question. What, in terms of the research, it's vast and wide. What's the biggest takeaway in terms of building equity when in supporting a Play Streets approach?
Yeah, I think one is that we also asked all of the LGAs to measure all the challenges against how important they were to overcome and how easy they were to overcome. And I always put up this really annoying graph when I presented that it goes like this, which means that the really important stuff is actually really hard to do, and the less important stuff is the really easy stuff. So I just think it's the benefit of us coming together on things like this and being part of the Play Australia network is that peer-to-peer learning and just acknowledging this is really long and hard work, but the benefits are so amazing for something so sort of simple. Just give yourself a break almost. Like if you're an LGA thinking, where do I start, or how am I going, or we've broken it down into 5 steps, but it can take a long time, and you're going to need support along all different parts of that journey. And don't be afraid to reach out and ask for it, because Kieran just has an amazing amount of knowledge and case studies and can connect you with other LGAs and learn. So the peer-to-peer learning, acknowledge that it's hard, but know that you're amongst friends who love you.
Yeah. That's gold, Erica, because I think we're finding that there's a lot of people in community development land who want to support this, but the levers aren't there internally to get it happening. But we'd welcome you, regardless of whether you're running actively supporting Play Streets or not, we'd welcome you into our network to have the conversations that are needed to canvass that internal support.
Yep.
And it does help when I think about what's happened in South Australia by unlocking state level support. It's really helped us to have a targeted focus and support bringing more local government groups together. And I'd love to see a similar model roll out in other states. And again, if you are in other states, please connect, and we can look at those kinds of opportunities together when they come up. Being working for a not-for-profit, there's a lot of grant writing, as you can imagine, but when it works out, it's gold. Did anyone have any other questions at all? Ellie, Erica. Oh, hang on. Here we go. From Patricia, question around support for the hosts, like road closure and traffic management and public liability.
You've picked the 3 key ones.
Yeah. Do you have a Play Streets policy? How you manage to get the council support? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Canny's doing a great job. Look, it's hard. It depending on which state you live in, it may be a little bit easier. There's what we're finding from a legislative context. There's different barriers within each of the different states, but definitely traffic management is a barrier. Public liability. Look, we found it's less of a barrier. I think it's about local government recognising that we can't push this onto communities, and as long as we solve it, that's manageable, and that's either by extending your cover, and you should be getting support from your legal team to look at that, or by purchasing public liability tickets and outlaying them to communities who are involved. But these sticky bits of the puzzle really should be managed at a local government level. If you've got a progressive roads person, that makes all the difference. If you're going to outsource to private providers, it can raise the cost model pretty quickly, and that's a bit of a pain point as you move down the line, if you can imagine. But lots of different ways you can go, Patricia. There's no easy response to that one, unfortunately.
I think it is though, Kieran, isn't it? It's about that step about bringing the people internally together and understanding the value and having a positive approach to it. And having a can-do attitude and looking at, well, what have other councils done in our local area? Because what we find is that a lot of the play streets are treated as big events. And so the road closure policy in the council is for big events. When you actually start to explain, actually, these are localized, small, quiet streets, we can start to actually maybe develop different policies for a gathering rather than an event. We always say if you start to have to talk about toilets, you've gone too big.
You don't need to identify the entry and exit points. No.
Yeah, so have a look at that action plan sort of that we've just put out today, and just have a look at, bringing people together, finding your internal advocates. How do we talk about the value of play streets and having that sort of can-do attitude around traffic? Because the work that some councils have done in simplifying that traffic process is amazing. It's really incredible stuff. And look at those, I think, to support.
Really good. And I really like that point, Erica, about keep it small scale. It's not about large numbers. You don't want 100 people in your street. It's about bringing those people who live there together and forming quality connections, as opposed to going vast and wide. Although, I mean, we can see, you could close down a shopping strip and run a play street, but acknowledging that that's a different model for a different purpose. So there is a space and time to do that, and some of our local government partners have done that, but it's it is for a different purpose. We're getting up to time. Ellie, Erica, any last reflections before we sort of wrap things up?
Just share. Keep coming to the things, keep asking the questions, because the more LGAs ask us questions, the more we know what support you need. So it's really helpful just asking us questions. Yep,
and just keeping conversations open internally as well. Like we do still have challenges with those things just mentioned, traffic management, public liability, and it's really about just continuing that conversation and keeping lines open, because you never know where it's going to take you down the track.
Magic. Thanks, Ellie. Thanks, Erica. Look, we might hold it there so we can finish on time. Look, really appreciate your thoughtful contributions, and a big thanks to everyone who has taken time out of their busy day to attend today's session. We'll get a copy of the slides and resources out to everyone if you haven't downloaded them from the chat. So we'll have a follow-up separate email, and please reach out if you'd like to discuss anything. Lastly, we have another special Play Today session lined up for Tuesday, the 1st of August. This is a Play Australia member-only session, and will feature our Play Australia CEO in Robin Munro-Miller, who will discuss the child's right to play and walk participants through General Comment 17, allowing opportunity for discussion on how your local government, how your organisation is implementing Article 31 of the UN Conventions on the Rights of the Child. So that should be a fantastic session. We're very much looking forward to that one. That's it from us. We thank you again. Stay playful, everyone. We'll see you later. Cheers.